the number one question that I get asked all the time by aspiring horse owners is whether or not they should keep their horse at home. And this is such a hard one because I know we all have dreams of living, with our horses, especially if you already have space for horses at home, and like looking out the window and seeing your horse in the barn in the mornings and getting your cup of coffee and walking out there. But I am unfortunately going to probably burst some bubbles right now, but I think this is quite possibly the most important thing that I could teach anybody who's considering buying a horse. So stay tuned. Okay. So if you're considering buying a horse and you've never had one before, I am going to highly recommend, and stay with me after you hear this because it's probably not the news that you want to hear, I'm going to highly recommend that you keep your horse in a stable for at least 1 year. And there are a few reasons for this. One is that the reasons that people often want to keep a horse at home are that they can be closer to their horse, that they will save money because they don't have to pay for board, and that they won't have a commute time to the barn. However, those things are not necessarily always true. Board actually, when you break it down, doesn't really save that much money when you think about the cost of utilities and owning a tractor to run your to keep your arena groomed, and the cost of feed, as well as your time. And if you have your horse at home, you likely will never be able to go on vacation or it'll be really difficult because you'll have to hire somebody to do all of the daily tasks. And secondly, you really should have at least 3 horses if you're going to keep horses at home. And the reason is because if something were to happen to one of those horses, or one of the horses leaves even for a trail ride or to go to the vet or whatever might be happening, you really don't want to leave one horse alone. They're social creatures and it's just not fair to them to live by themselves. So you really need to have at least 3 horses, in my opinion, to have them at home. And I know some people are going to have different ideas about that, but I'm just going to say what I believe there. And then also, the biggest thing, the biggest concern for me is that people who've never had a horse before have never had a horse before. So they often will miss things like signs of colic or their horse stocking up, or if the horse rolls and gets cast in the fence, they might not know what to do. And, there's some life-threatening situations for horses that are frankly really easy to miss if you just don't know what you're looking for. For example, a horse that's choking is still breathing. They don't look like they're choking, and they often don't even look like they're in distress. But they can't eat, and they will die if they don't get treated. And that's a really serious and scary event. But if you have somebody who's seen a horse choke before, they're a lot less likely to miss those signs, and they'll actually know what to do and when to call the vet and what to do until the vet arrives. So those are just a few of the reasons why I really highly encourage somebody to keep their horse at a boarding stable for at least a year. Go on a few vacations, see how it feels to leave your horse behind. Really map out the expenses after you're paying for the expenses of a horse at a boarding stable, and see how many of those expenses you would actually be able to let go if you had your horse at home. And what expenses might come up if you had your horse at home that might not exist at a boarding stable. And then also start thinking about, would you be able to recognize the early signs of a colic or a horse choking? Would you know what to do if your horse came out of its stall lame, or if they got cast, or if they just didn't eat their breakfast one day? And start thinking about those things. And then also think about, really realistically, if part of your reasoning for not wanting to keep your horse at a boarding facility is because you're concerned about the time of driving from home to the boarding facility, then I think it's also really important to take a moment to examine if you actually have the time to keep a horse at home. Because if you have a horse at home, you're going to have to spend at least an hour or 2 every day between feeding and mucking, which are activities that the boarding facility is going to do for you. So you know, those are things, all factors to consider. There's a lot of them, but really, you know, I don't want to squash any hopes and dreams here. I don't think it's a bad idea to have horses at home in general, but I do think if you are going to have horses at home, that you should really have a little bit of experience under your belt owning a horse that is your own, that you are solely responsible for, but that you can have the support of the experienced eye of a barn manager or a trainer that is looking out for you and looking out for your horse. So all that to say, I do think having your horse at home is quite the dream. I have had my horse at home before myself, and it was really fun to be able to look out my window and see my horse. But it was also a lot of work. It meant that I had to get up a couple hours earlier than I normally would in the morning so that I could muck and so that I could feed and exercise my horse every day. And, you know, at the time I really didn't mind that because I had just one horse and I was living by myself on this cute little ranch that I was renting a studio, and I got a stall included in my cost of my own rent. But to be completely honest with you, now I have a baby and I run a business and life is really chaotic and busy most days. And we're actually looking for a house right now. We're in the process of buying a house, and the question came up, like, should we be looking for a house with horse property? And I kind of sat with it for a moment and I was like, no. I don't want horses at home right now. This is not the moment in my life for that, and maybe I will again someday. But right now, I love the peace of mind of knowing that if I can't get out of the house one day because my baby is sick, or I'm sick, or I'm just tired because she's not sleeping at night, that the horses are all going to have all of their needs met. They will be fed, they will be blanketed, they will... their stalls will be clean, and that there are people around that can keep an eye out. I had a horse kick the fence the other day and he's totally fine, nothing happened, but I had several people call me concerned because they saw him kick the fence and they wanted me to come check on him, and that just wouldn't happen if he was at home. I just wouldn't have even known, and had he been lame the next day, I might not have had any reason why. So it's good to have all those extra eyes. I also one time, like worst case scenario, had a horse, this was a long time ago, that rolled and got his neck under the lowest bar on his corral and was stuck by his neck. And luckily he didn't struggle, and luckily there were people around because they were able to pull him out. And not only, you know, was it during my work hours, so if my horses were at home, I wouldn't have noticed until I got home in the evening. But also he was like 1,100 pounds and there's no way I would have been able to pull him out by myself. So to have those people around is invaluable. I've also been the person to find stuck horses or colicking horses and report it to other people, and just having that community is so, so valuable. So I can't emphasize enough, if you are considering having your horses at home, just hit pause on that idea, wait until you've had a little bit more experience under your belt, so you've dealt with a couple of crises, and then once you have worked through that and you feel confident and you weigh the time and the money and the real cost of keeping a horse at home, then make that decision with all of the information. If you want more information about buying or owning your first horse, I have some very exciting news for you. I'm about to come out with my very first online course. This is a course that I've offered a few times in person and had so much success with. People really, really love this course, so I decided to make it available all the time. Your first year with a new horse. And it'll walk you through everything from finding a vet, finding a farrier, how much money you're going to spend, how much time you're going to spend, how to keep your horse exercised, common troubleshooting. A lot of the things that we went over in this video are going to be gone over in much, much more detail in this course. It is going to be invaluable. It will help you with a lot of your questions. Just something to think about if you're considering buying a horse, or if you have recently bought your first horse and you're feeling a little overwhelmed. This course is for you. It's meant to help you really sort through all of the highs and lows and all of the factors associated with horse ownership. So go check that out. And as always, please, if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, share it with somebody, and leave a comment below to let me know what you think so that I know what kinds of videos to keep making for you in the future.